Now, what's this about rules for pa's and sons?
This first. The 75-cent rule.
The 75-cent rule. I don't believe I ever heard of that one.
Well, that's what I figured.
On the set of the Andy Griffith Show in 1963, a practical joke went horribly wrong. Andy Griffith was caught in bed with a co-star when cast members stormed into his hotel room. Executives at CBS went into a panic. Millions of dollars in advertising were threatened by sponsors. The fate of the show was decided in secret meetings. In reality, the most adored small-town sheriff in America was an unfaithful husband. The Andy Griffith Show nearly ended with what transpired next. Sheldon Leonard had years of experience in the field. When he saw talent, he recognized it. He saw Andy Griffith in the Broadway production of No Time for Sergeants in the 1950s. Everything changed in that instant. Griffith portrayed an innocent yet endearing country boy who was conscripted into the army. His charm captivated the audience, and his humor seemed natural. Something special caught Leonard's eye. He saw more than just a talented performer. He saw a television show's ideal lead. The Andy Griffith Show was born out of that concept. It turned out to be one of Leonard's most significant career choices. He was correct. Griffith's portrayal of Sheriff Andy Taylor resonated with viewers during the show's airing in a manner that few characters ever did. Mayberry felt like home because of his friendliness, sense of humor, and practical wisdom. But CBS needed evidence that Griffith could sustain a series before approving the show. Sheriff Andy Taylor was first introduced to the public on February 15, 1960, in the Danny Meets Andy Griffith episode of the Danny Thomas program. Danny Thomas's character, Danny Williams, is stopped for speeding in Mayberry during the episode. There is more to Andy Taylor than just being a sheriff. In addition, he edits the town newspaper and serves as the justice of the peace. Although viewers saw a glimpse of Mayberry in the episode, some details were different. Andy's persona tended towards small-town cliches and was more exaggerated. Frances Bavier, who subsequently played Aunt Bee, made an appearance as Henrietta Perkins. This was more than a test of creativity. Sheldon Leonard made a wise business decision. CBS was able to determine viewer interest through the backdoor pilot without having to invest additional funds in a new show. It was the exact response they had hoped for. General Foods, their main sponsor, and CBS were persuaded. Green light. Television was greatly influenced by corporate sponsors in the early 1960s. The show had the full support of General Foods, not just approval. They decided to sponsor the Andy Griffith Show right away after seeing the pilot. Everything was made easier by that choice. Now, CBS had the resources and self-assurance to move forward. The first episode of the Andy Griffith Show aired on October 3, 1960. The setting was one of Leonard and Griffith's best decisions. Mayberry was more than a little community. It never went out of style. The show felt like it was from the 1930s or 1940s, despite the fact that it was broadcast in the 1960s. Neither the civil rights movements nor the Cold War were mentioned. That was deliberate. Griffith and Leonard desired for Mayberry to be an escape. Andy Griffith wasn't totally at ease in his role when the Andy Griffith Show debuted in 1960. He didn't want to be stereotyped as a simple-minded pumpkin because he had just played Will Stockdale, a charming but awkward country boy in No Time for Sergeants. His portrayal of Sheriff Andy Taylor in the beginning mainly relied on exaggerated Southern charm. Huge smiles, an overly enthusiastic demeanor, and a lighthearted enthusiasm that was more reminiscent of one of his stage monologues than a fully realized character. However, Griffith soon saw that this strategy would not be sustainable. His performance changed by the second season. He became the calm, collected core of Mayberry for laughs. He played the straight man and left the comedy to the supporting cast. This modification altered the entire structure of the show, not just the acting. The main character in the majority of the era's sitcoms caused mayhem. Lucy's antics propelled the plot of I Love Lucy. However, the dynamic was reversed by the Andy Griffith Show. Andy Taylor emerged as the sage and patient problem solver, while the supporting cast, particularly Don Knotts' Barney Fife, brought the humor. Don Knotts' portrayal of Barney Fife was one of the show's biggest surprises. Permanent deputy. However, Knotts' chemistry with Griffith was evident when he read for a single episode. He was immediately offered a one-year contract by producer Sheldon Leonard. The entire dynamic of the show was altered by that choice. The casting of Frances Bavier as Aunt Bee also presented its own set of difficulties. At first, Andy Griffith didn't want her in the part. The call came from Sheldon Leonard. Although Bavier was a seasoned actress, Griffith's laid-back personality did not mesh well with her somber professional manner. On the other hand, the hunt for Opie Taylor presented a distinct kind of difficulty. 6-year-old Ron Howard stood out among the more than 500 child actors who tried out for the part. When he appeared on a General Electric theater episode, producer Sheldon Leonard was captivated by his innate charm. When that pilot didn't get picked up, Howard joined the Andy Griffith Show even though he was actually committed to another show at the time. At first, Opie was meant to be mischievous and full of wisecracks, like many TV kids of the time. However, the father of Ron Howard proposed an alternative strategy. In contrast to other child roles on television, he instructed Ron to portray Opie as sincere and respectful. It was a wise choice. One of the show's most poignant elements was Opie's bond with his father, which provided warmth and counterbalanced the humor. Growing up on set, Howard worked on the show for 8 years, from 1960 to 1968. He was already considering his future as a filmmaker by the time it was over. He began experimenting with Super 8 cameras at the age of 15, which set the stage for his eventual Oscar-winning directing career. As an actor and storyteller, Howard still cites his time on The Andy Griffith Show as one of the most significant influences on his career. The Andy Griffith Show was an immediate hit when it debuted on October 3, 1960. It ranked 4th overall in Nielsen ratings and became the most popular sitcom in America in its first season. At a time when TV was dominated by titans like Gunsmoke and The Ed Sullivan Show, that kind of success was uncommon. However, there was something unique about The Andy Griffith Show. It felt genuine, not merely humorous. It provided viewers with a cozy, comfortable, and weekly worth of small-town life. The first season, which aired from October 1960 to May 1961 and had an average rating of 27.8 million viewers per week, brought viewers to the fictional town of Mayberry in the north, which felt like home. Sheriff Andy Taylor, portrayed by Andy Griffith, was at the heart of it all. He was a cool-headed and wise man who maintained order through patience and common sense. Don Knotts' portrayal of his constable, Barney Fife, was hilarious due to his excessive enthusiasm and frequent errors. They had the ideal chemistry together. Barney was erratic and vivacious, whereas Andy was steady and considerate. The show worked because of that balance. The way the Andy Griffith Show blended humor and emotion was what set it apart. Nearly about jokes. It had to do with people. Sheriff Taylor was more than just a police officer. He was a single parent to Ron Howard's character, Opie. He shared a home with his Aunt Bee, Frances Bavier, who did her best to look after them. There were humorous moments in each episode, but there were also heartwarming moments. And teachings on friendship, family, and moral behavior. Andy and Barney were trying to resist eating Aunt Bee's awful homemade pickles in one of the show's most well-known episodes, The Pickle Story. In addition to being humorous, it demonstrated their generosity. Even though the pickles tasted terrible, they didn't want to offend her. CBS's smart scheduling was a major factor in the show's instant success. It was broadcast on Mondays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, immediately following one of the network's most popular shows, The Danny Thomas Show. Arbitrary selection. In reality, Andy Griffith's first appearance as Sheriff Taylor on The Danny Thomas Show served as the impetus for The Andy Griffith Show. In order to keep viewers interested, CBS positioned the new show immediately after The Danny Thomas Show, knowing that viewers were already familiar with the character. The strategy was successful, and the ratings skyrocketed. The show's longevity was the true measure of its success. It consistently ranked in the top 10 for 8 years. Consistency like that was practically unheard of. The show maintained its viewership even after season 5. The Andy Griffith Show accomplished something that hardly any other show had ever done by the time it concluded on April 1, 1968. It was America's top show at the end of its last season. Few others have ever managed that, including Seinfeld and I Love Lucy. However, there was a lot of drama behind the scenes on The Andy Griffith Show. In real life, Frances Bavier was not at all like Aunt Bee. She portrayed the devoted and affectionate matriarch of Mayberry on The Andy Griffith Show, but in real life, she was aloof and challenging to collaborate with. The most significant argument she had was with Andy Griffith. Although Bavier was serious about acting and had little tolerance for antics, he enjoyed a laid-back set full of jokes and pranks. There was an obvious tension between them. The crew and actors knew about it. She felt left out, too. She thought her character didn't get the same comedic opportunities as Don Knotts, who played Barney Fife, who received the majority of the laughs. She acknowledged feeling marginalized in interviews, stating that I've had to sit back and let other people laugh. She even sought therapy to deal with the overwhelming amount of frustration she was experiencing. She and Griffith had more than a tense relationship. It was downright hostile at times. According to reports, Griffith was upset that producer Sheldon Leonard cast Bavier rather than him. Even Gomer Pyle's actor Jim Nabors had to remind Griffith to be kind to Bavier, referring to her as a gifted actress. However, the tension remained constant. Like negotiating a landmine with her. She might become agitated at small requests. Bavier and Griffith finally made peace after years of hostility. She apologized to him over the phone in 1989 while she was fighting cancer. "I'm sorry we didn't get along better," she said, taking responsibility for their tense relationship. "I was to blame." It was one of their final exchanges of words. Don Knotts' departure from the show after a season in 1965 was another significant upheaval. However, the true cause was a financial misunderstanding that altered everything, not just his movie career. Knotts signed a 5-year contract when the show debuted in 1960, making roughly $1,250 per episode. That came to about $35,000 annually. Although it was a respectable salary, Griffith's earnings were far higher. Griffith was making a lot more money because he owned the majority of the show. Knotts was not involved. He thought the series would be coming to an end by 1965, as his contract was coming to an end. He agreed to a 5-film deal with Universal Studios in light of this. However, CBS later decided to renew the Andy Griffith series for additional seasons. Knotts was suddenly faced with a difficult choice. In an attempt to obtain a better deal or a financial stake in the show, he approached Griffith about renegotiating his contract. The request was misinterpreted by Griffith as an ultimatum. Rather than engage in negotiations, he released Knotts. Griffith and Knotts stayed close even after they left. The show was never quite the same, even though he came back for guest appearances. Mayberry lost some of its original charm without Barney Fife. After he left, many fans thought the humor had diminished. It would be disastrous to replace Barney. Jack Byrne's character Warren Ferguson, a new constable, was added to the show in season 6. Burns looked like a perfect fit on paper. He had previously performed with George Carlin and had a background in comedy. Warren Ferguson, however, did not work. Warren came across as too eager and awkward, in contrast to Barney, who was awkward but endearing. The small-town charm of Mayberry didn't suit him. He didn't resonate with the audience. The producers recognized their error after just 11 episodes. Was quietly removed from the show without giving a reason. They never made another attempt to replace Barney. Rather, the comedic voids were filled by cameos from Gomer Pyle and Floyd the Barber. But one thing was evident from Warren's failure. Don Knotts was more than a mere performer. It was impossible to replace Barney Fife. Even less time was spent on the show by Eleanor Donahue. She portrayed Andy Taylor's supposed love interest, Ellie Walker, a clever and self-reliant chemist. She agreed to a 3-year contract, but she left after just 12 episodes. The primary issue was Donahue and Griffith's lack of chemistry. Their romance was forced and awkward. In one scene, Donahue reacted awkwardly when Andy reached for Ellie's hand. The script didn't call for it. It was difficult to ignore discomfort in real life. Behind the scenes, Donahue was also having difficulties. She felt alone in the cast and was coping with personal stress. She even had some of her lines repurposed for other characters. She requested to be released from her contract because she was unhappy with her role. Producers did not quarrel. Although he later acknowledged that the writers had not adequately developed Ellie Walker, Griffith took her departure personally. She had potential, but she was just another TV history what might have been without compelling writing and chemistry. The relationship between Andy Griffith and Annetta Corsaw extended beyond their work together on The Andy Griffith Show. In 1963, Corsaw appeared in the series as Opie's teacher, Helen Crump. Even though her character was only meant to be in one episode, she and Griffith had a strong chemistry. She soon established herself as a regular, and their on-screen romance became a major plot point. It was even more complicated off-screen. Griffith was wed to his first wife, Barbara Bray Edwards. The book Andy and Don, The Making of a Friendship and a Classic American TV Show by Daniel DeVis claims that she had captured Griffith's heart. Even though he was still married, he made at least one, if not more, marriage proposals. Corso, however, declined. She had no desire for a relationship based on adultery. The cast and crew became openly aware of their affair. Despite their best efforts to remain discreet, their relationship was clear. A Hollywood hotel was the scene of one of their most notorious incidents during their alleged affair. In order to play a practical joke on the couple, the Andy Griffith Show's crew sent a member dressed as a waiter to bring dinner to their room. Originally intended to be a joke, it became a scandal due to what transpired. The crew member reportedly caught Griffith and Corsott in a compromising position when he entered. Their relationship was revealed to anyone who hadn't already figured it out when the prank backfired. Griffith was enraged. Behind the scenes, the incident only increased tension. This might have been a pivotal moment for Corsott. What would prevent him from cheating on his wife with her in the future? Even though she had already turned down his offers, this instance might have strengthened her resolve. They continued to collaborate in spite of the humiliation, never mentioning the incident. The Andy Griffith Show's wholesome image was essential to its success. That might have been harmed by any suggestion of scandal. Griffith's private life was therefore kept out of the public eye. Even Griffith was cautious. In order to prevent drawing too much attention to Andy Taylor and Helen Crump's real-life relationship, he allegedly cut some of their romantic scenes. Less kissing on screen meant fewer questions. The crew and actors also said nothing. No one publicly spoke, even as rumors of the hotel prank circulated. Media coverage was less intrusive in the 1960s than it is now. Every scandal was not covered by tabloids. No gossiping on social media. It was easier for celebrities like Griffith to keep secrets. From 1960 to 1968, the Andy Griffith Show was in operation, capturing the warmth and familiarity of small-town life. At first glance, Mayberry appeared to be a straightforward community where issues were resolved amicably. However, the show managed to subtly convey more profound messages. It addressed issues of class, accountability, and individual values without ever feeling burdensome. Despite not directly addressing significant issues like the Vietnam War or civil rights, it managed to provoke thought in its audience. The dignity of working-class life was one of its most powerful themes. This was demonstrated in a way that viewers found memorable in the 1963 episode Man in a Hurry. Malcolm Tucker, a businessman, is stranded in Mayberry after his vehicle breaks down. He is accustomed to a world where waiting is not tolerated, time is money, and everything happens quickly. However, nobody in Mayberry appears to be rushing. On Sundays, shops are closed. No one is concerned about deadlines, and people take their time. He is initially irritated. He encourages others to move more quickly, but they don't. Something changes by the episode's conclusion. To discover the things he has been missing. He discovers that sometimes it's okay to slow down while rocking in a chair on Andy's front porch. The message was obvious and unforced. Mayberry provided an alternative in a society that frequently prioritizes productivity and speed over interpersonal relationships. Despite its allure, Mayberry wasn't flawless. As the 1960s went on, the town's lack of black residents felt more and more out of place. Later on, Andy Griffith acknowledged that he felt bad about this. A significant portion of reality was overlooked by the show in its attempt to depict small-town life. Nevertheless, themes of belonging were central to the show. In Mayberry, characters like Gomer Pyle and Barney Fife, who might have been viewed as outsiders in real life, were welcomed. There was more to the town than picture-perfect families. Giving people a place where they mattered was the goal. The way certain episodes addressed actual problems made them stand out. Among them was Opie and the Bully, which debuted in 1961. At the moment, Opie is being bullied. School. A child takes his milk money every day, and Opie gives it to him without protest. While Andy doesn't advise him to avoid confrontation, he also doesn't advise him to punch the bully. Audiences remember the lesson he teaches Opie. He shouldn't be the type of boy who seeks out fights, but I also don't want him to flee from one when he's right. Opie sustains a black eye but also regains his dignity when he confronts the bully. The episode achieved equilibrium. While it didn't exalt fighting, it also didn't imply that leaving was though it was a straightforward tale, it had significance. Opie's Hobo Friend, which aired in 1961, was another memorable episode. David Brown, portrayed by Buddy Ebsen, is a drifter who wins Opie over with his easygoing demeanor. Opie believes that skipping school isn't a big deal because David doesn't have a job and doesn't follow the rules. Andy intervenes by attempting to guide David in a better direction rather than by making him leave. David stages his own arrest to discipline Opie after realizing he isn't suited for that kind of life. There were no simple answers in the episode. It didn't portray David as a bad guy, but it also didn't act as though his lifestyle was admirable. Some viewers thought it was fantastic. It romanticized vagrancy, according to others. In any case, it made people stop and think. The show handled social issues in a way that avoided being overt. In the 1962 television series Mayberry Goes Bankrupt, local authorities mistreated an elderly man. Outsiders. These episodes tapped into something deeper, but they never made reference to actual events. They caused people to consider kindness, justice, and how communities ought to treat one another. They are still effective today because of this. Fans were left wanting more when the Andy Griffith Show concluded in 1968. CBS also wasn't prepared to say goodbye, so they developed Mayberry RFD as a spin-off. It wasn't a brand new plot or a reboot. Ken Berry's portrayal of Sam Jones, the new protagonist, was a continuation. Mike was a young boy being raised by a widowed farmer named Sam. Both characters had already been introduced in the last season of the Andy Griffith Show in order to create a seamless transition. When Mayberry RFD debuted on September 23, 1968, it got off to a great start. Fans had been anticipating Andy Taylor and Helen Crump's wedding, which was included in it. At the time, the episode became the most watched television premiere, breaking previous records. The first season of the show was the fourth most watched in the nation. In the beginning, Andy Griffith made brief appearances to facilitate the transition. Additionally, the town maintained its same vibe thanks to well-known characters like Aunt Bee, Gooberpile, and Howard Sprague. However, something had changed. Although the show retained Mayberry's charm, it lacked the depth and humor that set the Andy Griffith Show apart. The conflicts were shallow, and the stories were simpler. Nevertheless, viewers adored it. It remained in the top 10 Nielsen ratings for 3 seasons. In addition to introducing the new show, the first episode also served as Andy's farewell. His bachelor party, which his friends throw at an Italian restaurant, is where the story starts. Aunt Bee makes a significant choice as he prepares for his honeymoon. She believes Andy no longer needs her, so she intends to leave Mayberry and move in with her sister in West Virginia. In order to establish her new role in the series, she later changes her mind and moves in with Sam Jones as his housekeeper. There is a lot of humor and emotion in the wedding itself. As Andy's best man, played by Barney Fife, his anxious energy makes the moment more poignant and humorous. Aunt Bee decides to remain in town after the ceremony after discussing her future with Reverend Tucker. It was the ideal way to end one chapter and begin a new one. Despite its widespread use, Mayberry RFD was short-lived. Not because viewers became disinterested. In 1971, the program was a casualty of CBS's rural purge. Because younger, urban audiences were more appealing to advertisers, the network sought them out. Thus, the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and Mayberry RFD were all canceled in spite of their high ratings. According to a joke made by a CBS executive, anything that featured a tree was discarded. Fans were taken aback. The show had never lost its appeal, but now it was no more. That seemed to be the end of Mayberry for years. Then, on April 13, 1986, CBS released Return to Mayberry, a made-for-TV film that featured the majority of the original cast. With a 33.0 Nielsen rating, it became the highest-rated television film of the year. The narrative begins 20 years later. Opie is about to become a father when Andy Taylor returns to Mayberry. In the meantime, Barney Fife is given the opportunity to run for sheriff at last. Barney's long-overdue marriage to Thelma Lou is one of the movie's most significant scenes. Not everybody came back. Aunt Bee was conspicuously absent. The film reveals that she passed away because the actress decided not to return for health reasons. The movie gave fans the resolution they had been hoping for, even without her. Though it may not have had the same impact as the Andy Griffith Show in retrospect, Mayberry RFD allowed fans to spend a few more years in a town they cherished. And everyone was reminded of why they had never truly left when Return to Mayberry aired in 1986. Since 1990, Mayberry Days, a festival that attracts over 40,000 attendees annually, has transformed Mount Airy, North Carolina, the hometown of Andy Griffith, into a scene from the Andy Griffith Show every September. People dressed as Barney Fife, Aunt Bee, and other well-known characters swarm the streets for a few days. The roads are lined with vintage police cars, similar to those in the show. The Mayberry universe is brought to life through parades, music, and special occasions. The Mayberry Days Parade, where participants dress as beloved characters, is one of the main events. With its original props and memorabilia, including items donated by Don Knotts, the Andy Griffith Museum provides a closer look at the history of the show. Fans can view vintage episodes on a large screen at the historic Earl Theater, just like they did in the 1960s. The music continues at the Blackman Amphitheater with live bluegrass bands. The way the whole town participates is what really makes Mayberry Days unique. Shops offer dishes inspired by the show, souvenirs with a Mayberry theme, and impersonators who stroll the streets chatting with tourists as though they were in an episode. Fans see it as more than just a festival, it's an opportunity to enter the Mayberry universe. The Andy Griffith Show did more than just appeal to viewers. It received numerous accolades. Between 1960 and 1968, the program won 6 Primetime Emmy Awards. Don Knotts, one of the most honored comedic actors in television history, received 5 of those for his performance as Barney Fife. Frances Bavier won an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in 1967 for his role as Aunt Bee. Remarkably, despite being nominated several times, the show itself never took home an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series. Only became more powerful after it was over. It won TV Land Awards in the early 2000s, such as Favorite Second Banana for Barney Fife and Single Dad of the Year for Andy Taylor. In 2006 and 2021, it was admitted into the TV Hall of Fame of the Online Film and Television Association. The enduring influence of the show has also been acknowledged by critics. Much like Opie the Birdman, it was ranked 9th on TV Guide's list of the 50 greatest moments in television history in 2002.